Hello, Steve White's 89. Well, I love Friday the 13th. I've been a fan my whole life, and one of the things I'm really glad of was I got to go to like summer camp when I was a kid. Now, I don't quite know how it works in America. I guess because there's summers in the middle of the year, basically parents would send their kids away for a couple of weeks just to get rid of them so they didn't have to deal with them over the holidays. Whereas how we did it was more of a sort of a week thing or just something we did like for fun. Um, and we kind of did it because winter in the middle of the year for us. It was more of a January, February, March sort of thing before we got into winter or after winter, like September, October sort of thing. Um, and I did two camps, technically three, um, and I really enjoyed it. And I'm glad that I have those memories because whenever I watch a film like The Burning or Friday the 13th or any of those old horror movies with like, kids at summer camps, I kind of feel like have been there and I know what that was like. So the first place we went was Deviat. Now, I think it was when I was in like year two or three or four or something. I don't know. I can't remember. It might have been two or three, but pretty young. And I remember going down in the bus, and it was either on the coastline or it was near the Tamar River. There was basically like a beach water area that we went to at one point. But the cabins themselves, it was like they had one big sort of main sort of building, and that was where all the boys stayed in just one big room with a lot of beds. And then there were separate little cabins that the girls stayed in, as I remember. Now, when I first got there, I kind of got excited because I found like I went in and got a put my bag on a bed that was right near sort of the window and looking out over the window. It had a view and everything, and I just was looking forward to it. But unfortunately for me, one of the guys who bullied me a couple of memorable times, including this, he got there last because there weren't enough beds for all the boys, basically. And he took my bag off the bed, put his on there, and basically said that that's where he was going to be sleeping. Now I went to the teacher, and they didn't do anything. They just let it stand, and I ended up having to sleep outside on a balcony with one of the teachers. So they had a balcony with couches because there weren't enough beds for all the kids that were there. And I think it was me and another kid had to actually sleep out there on couches along with one of the teachers. So that kind of sucked, but the rest of it was good. Because I would have loved to have stayed in the main room with all the boys. I probably would have been bullied, but it still would have been fun. Now the place itself, like, it kind of felt like the Friday the 13th sort of campsite where you had the main sort of cabin and you had all the little cabins all around it. And I don't remember a lot of the stuff that we did. I know that we went to this like swimming area that was like out in the bush, and there was like a whirlpool that we couldn't sort of swim in because it was too dangerous, and there was another area that was too deep. So there was sort of the teacher was sort of standing, not letting anyone going past a certain area in that. And I remember I adopted like a pet rock that I was carrying around everywhere, and there's a picture of me holding the pet rock, and I'm wearing this red cap that I always wore everywhere. I remember when we were all lining up to go into the showers, they had to pull the cap off me last minute, so I didn't go into the shower with it. And it was just fun. I just remember enjoying it, and just the idea that I went to camp as a kid, I love. Now, the second time it was in, I think, year six, so it was the end of primary school. The first one was like at the start of primary school, and the second one was like at the end of primary school. And it was different. It was South Mount Cameron, and it was later in the year. I think it was September. I may be confusing that with something else that year. But it was a bit cooler, but it was sort of one big, I don't know where the girls stayed, but it was one big room of bunk beds, just two rows of bunk beds and like a window at the end. And I got to stay in there with everyone else this time. Unfortunately, I sleepwalked. So I was actually walking up and down the hall and kind of creeping people out. And I actually woke up one of the nights hanging off the bed. Like my arms were on the top of the bed because I was on one of the top bunks. And I don't think I was quite touching the ground. Like I think I was trying to get back in the bed when I woke up or something. It was just really weird. And I think I gave everyone the creeps because I'm just walking around asleep. But yeah, it was sort of similar sort of thing. But the main room, I just remember the main sort of room. It was sort of built on a hill, so one side was sort of up high, and you could look out over the view and everything. And we went climbing. And whenever I watch Star Trek 5 and you see those scenes of William Shatner climbing up the mountain, I feel like it was like that. Okay, you can't really compare South Mount Cameron or Mount Cameron to Yosemite, but to a kid it kind of felt like that. That's what my memory is like. And there's this one section that kind of looks like one of the shots in the film, and there's this big stretch of just rock where there's no trees or bushes or anything. And I remember going back down, I slid, and I like cut myself and wore through my pants and everything. So I literally slid down the side of this mountain. But we had like flying foxes, and we had I think we had like archery, and there were like games where we had to like find all the things in the woods, and we had like a map and all this sort of stuff, and it was fun. I'm glad that I did that. And we sat around the campfire and told ghost stories and toasted marshmallows and all that sort of stuff like that you see in the movies and all that. And I just really loved that I had that experience. And also, my mum was very much in charge of the pony club in the town, and each year they'd have a camp. And what the camp would consist of is we were leasing land for the pony club for people to keep their horses on there. In the end, there was only really my family with horses on there for a while, but there were other people there. And once a year, because there were these big metal stables that were like a big open sort of area and a cement floor, and other stables and that, and little areas. And what they do is most of the kids would sleep in the stables in like tents and stuff sleeping bags and little tents. And then the other kids would have tents in like the horse yards and that. And they'd have like a central like fire, and they were like sitting around toasting marshmallows and telling stories and stuff. And it just felt very much like a camp and that in the movies and that. And I loved going to do that as well, because although I never went, my sisters went because they were in the pony club. But whenever we went out to feed the horses or whatever, or because my mum was involved in it, I'd sort of get to hang out there as well. So I got to have this sort of camp experience, and I always associated that area with camp. And whenever I watched Friday the 13th in Camp Crystal Lake, I always thought of that area because it felt like a camp, because I'd been there when it was run as a camp for a little while. So those are sort of my experiences. And aside from going to Hobart a couple of times to see the chocolate factory, where and I know at one point we stayed in this weird place. There was like a house sort of like on the hill, and then you went down and there were different cabins, and I was in a cabin with 4 boys. It was like in the city though, so there was a lot of space in that, and lawns and that, but it wasn't like like a forest camp or like a bush camp or anything. And I just remember there was this creepy cleaner, and he scared me, and I ended up running to the main building for something and falling and grazing my knees and everything, and scratching up one of the action figures I had at the time and that. And not the same experience, but I really enjoyed the going out to the bush, the traditional sort of camp. And whenever I watch horror movies where they have kids going to camps and stuff like that, and Friday the 13th and The Burning and stuff like that, it just reminds me of that. And I kind of feel like I got to have that sort of camp experience, and I sort of look at those films and I can kind of relate to the kids in those in a way, which is, I don't know, I just wanted to share that story because I don't know how many people live in the city and don't get to do stuff like that. It seems like more of a country thing. But yeah, I can't call it summer camp. I went to camp when I was a kid, and it was fun.